He's been, we gotta talk to him. He's been busy.
And everybody, we're going to be recording soon, so hold tight.
He's been, we gotta talk to him. He's been busy.
And everybody, we're going to be recording soon, so hold tight. Okay, Gary, we're live.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining to our monthly Hudson 7 meeting for June 23rd. We are past summer solstice. Days are going to start getting shorter, so please take advantage of the time when you can. We're on the downside of the curve right now. But anyway, so thank you for joining. Anyway, thank you. This is our virtual monthly meeting. Today is June 23rd. My name is Gary Bassett. I am the mayor of Village of Rhinebeck and also the chair of the Hudson 7. The Hudson 7 meetings are recorded and streamed live on our YouTube channel page. A link to the page can be found on our website at www.hudson7.org. The video of all the meetings and minutes are available to the public on the Hudson 7's website as well. If a member of the public would like to participate during our public comment section of our virtual meeting, please review our procedures for public or written comments on our website. The Hudson 7 council members can please control your own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you're not speaking to avoid background noise or feedback. When you wish to speak, just please raise your hand and I will acknowledge you. Before you speak, please state your name and municipality for all our audio listeners. So in attendance tonight, the voting members we have, myself, Gary Bassett, Shannon Harris, right, representing the town of Esopus, Lynn Ruggiero, representing the town of Hyde Park. We do not have a quorum at this time, but we will proceed with the meeting, and when a quorum comes up, we can backtrack to go back and pick up where we're at. Any questions? Very good. Okay. So we did a roll, just in addition to the roll call, we have Rebecca Martin, from Riverkeeper, helping us every day, keeping us alive and well. Paul Malrose, technical advisor. Dan Shapley, Riverkeeper, technical advisor. And Dan Valentine from Ty and Bond. Grant Yang from DEC, right? Grant, is it DEC? I always forget. Anyways.
DOH.
DOH, sorry, and Grant for DWSP2, and Mike Forang. So welcome. That's our call to order. First, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 19th, 2022 meeting.
We can't do that right now.
Oh, you're right. Geez, I get right into it and we don't have a quorum. We'll pass on that. Communications. Rebecca, I'm going to turn that over to you.
We received a outreach from Kyla Bennett, the keynote speaker, on PFAS. There's a public forum for the Dunn landfill. In response to from a discussion last month on a sheen that was seen on the Hudson near the walkway, Dan suggested that the Hudson 7 program 2 numbers into their phones to report any spills or other concerns in real time. And those numbers are here in the communications. And there's a link to the DEC site for more information, background information on reporting. Just an update that the Class C stream legislation that the Hudson 7's been following passed through the Senate, and a decision will likely be made by the well, we don't know, but the governor, it's in her court at this point to approve that legislation, and the expectation is that she would do so in December. And that's all for this month.
Okay, thank you. Europa's out, but I understand that Europa sent something. Do you have that, Rebecca, as well? An update?
Yes, Europa just wanted to alert the Hudson 7 about a DWSP2 meeting that Grant has set up in July, which he'll speak to likely during his time.
Okay, we can go right into a public comment and have Tracy. Can you please let
Great.
Tracy in?
Yes. Tracy? Hi, Tracy. Are you there on the phone?
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Hi, Tracy. You're with the Hudson 7. I know you can't see everyone here this evening, but you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Frisch. I am the founder and the lead organizer of the Clean Air Action Network of Glens Falls. And in the last year, I've been working on a couple of projects where community members have asked for our help. And there are these 2 projects we believe will have an impact on the purity of the Hudson River. We believe they have the potential to cause hazardous contamination with PFAS and other chemicals. So I'd like to just very briefly tell you how that would happen. One of them is would be the first sewage sludge biochar facility, and that would be in the town of Monroe in eastern Saratoga County. And that plant would burn, in the absence of oxygen, would burn up to 720 tons per day of sewage sludge that would be trucked in from unknown locations. And there would be, I can't remember offhand, I'm sorry, I've been working on other things today, but I think about 30,000 gallons of wastewater would go to the Glens Falls wastewater treatment plant. All sewage sludge is contaminated with PFAS chemicals. We have some tests that the state has conducted, and all samples were contaminated, and all samples in other states were also found to be contaminated. And as you may know, EPA just came out with a health advisory last week setting a very low number of parts per quadrillion of PFAS as a safe limit. New York, the standard is 10 parts per trillion currently. Highly persistent chemical that the state is requiring all wastewater, all drinking water supplies, public drinking water supplies to test for. But wastewater treatment plants do not have the capacity to detoxify materials, sewage or other wastewater containing PFAS. This would be discharged into the Hudson River. So that is one facility. The proposal is coming close to being approved by the planning board. The other facility proposed is just going before the planning board in the town of Half Moon. That is, I should also mention there is no sewage sludge biochar facility in New York. This would be the first, and this is a very large one. So New York does not yet know how to regulate them, and I can go into more detail. I'd be happy to talk to anyone who is interested about why we believe PFAS would be in wastewater. The other facility by Hughes Energy would also be the first. There is a current proposal and application in the town of Roxbury in Delaware County. The Hughes Energy facility would take in between 500 and almost 700 tons of municipal solid waste garbage per day and cook it in a giant autoclave, which is like a pressure cooker. The 29,000, I just looked at this, 29,000 gallons of wastewater going to a wastewater treatment plant. The closest plant is in Half Moon, and that discharges into the Hudson River. Cooking garbage, landfill leachate is known to be high in PFAS and other harmful chemicals. Cooking garbage would speed up the process of these kinds of harmful substances made from the garbage. So it would be very, very hazardous to have that run through a wastewater treatment plant and be discharged directly to the Hudson River. So I just want to bring this to your attention, your potential allies in stopping these ill-advised projects, and also potential advocates to the state DEC to require better treatment methods so that these discharges will not affect drinking water. So that's really what I have to say. I'm going to give my phone number and my email, and I invite anyone who wants more information. I'm happy to send it to you. My phone number is 518-692-8242, and my email is tracy.frisch@gmail.com. Thank you for your interest.
Tracy, any questions?
Tracy, does PFAS break down at high temperatures that would be in an incinerator?
I reviewed a couple of papers, one of them by EPA research scientists in a working sewage sludge biochar facility. They were unable to determine the fate of PFAS from the sewage sludge. And I had an hour-long conversation with the lead author of this 2022 peer-reviewed paper. And he told me that I was on the right track and that more research is needed. He wasn't even sure if it could have stayed in the biochar. He said the methods for extracting it might not be sufficient. So there are many, many questions that remain unanswered. And there's, of course, the possibility of deposition from the stacks into the Hudson River directly and into soil around the Hudson River where it could run off or leach into groundwater. There's just a lot of more research needed.
Yeah, Tracy, are there any public comment periods open on this, or are they all been passed?
The Hughes Energy proposal was the application was just received as part of a planned development district proposal application in Moreau on June 9th, I believe. So that has not even been reviewed in any way or been before the planning board. In Moreau, the town planning board, the town gave it a negative declaration despite a myriad of unanswered questions. And there was a public hearing in May that there was a lot of testimony, but I think it's on fast track. The town officials would like to, the town supervisor would like it to be approved. And there's one lone planning board member who is raising questions, and at this point, I think it would be possible to get things in the record, and I could provide, information on how to do that. Should I give that to Rebecca? Would that be a good way to get it to those of you from the different municipalities?
Yes, if you could, please.
Okay, I can send something tomorrow. Because I think your concerns should definitely be heard.
Well, thank you for sharing this with us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I just thought of this today, and it happened to hit a jackpot in terms of timing. So thank you very much, and I wish you all well.
Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Okay, that was interesting as well. Okay, let's go on to old business. There's so many things that are happening with our Hudson 7 project coordinator position, and it's evolving and taking its time to work through the process. So I want to bring everybody, the committee met with Linda French, an attorney for the county, as well as Brad Barkley. And I don't think, Rebecca, you have to remind me if anybody else was at that call besides the two of them and our committee, the project coordinator committee.
I believe Elizabeth Spinzia was with us too.
Was she? All right. Bottom line is Linda gave a great review and has access to all of our information and material. And she's in the process of trying to pull that all together and come back with a recommendation for us. And we do have another follow-up meeting scheduled on July 7th. I found the meeting very informative. I found that what the actions Linda wanted to take on behalf of the county, whether it was her who actually ended up doing the work or it was ended up being subcontracted out to somebody else through the county, has still yet to be determined as to what the plan is going to be. But I view it as positive in terms of where we're going. My biggest concern about all of this is it's going to take time. We wanted to make this sooner than later, and the response that we got from Linda was that it's going to take several months to be able to get our IMA rewritten. We need to get it back out to all the municipalities. We will probably need resolutions with all the counties to adopt the new IMA. We will have to go through that process and then possibly start to fight if we wanted to go to a 501c3. But it was the date that she's putting on the end of it. It's feasible that this could be done by the end of the year. No.
It also includes amending your bylaws.
Yes, right. By the end of the year. So not on the trajectory that I was hoping to be on, but I think we're on the right path to get it done and get it done right. Any comments? Okay. We'll keep everybody informed of where we're going and how that is proceeding to move. Both county executives are still 100% behind us. I've spoken to both of them. They both are anxious to work with us and help make us continuing success on both the Ulster and the Dutchess side. So I find that encouraging in these times and what they're both doing, but they are both fully committed to helping the Hudson 7. Okay. Second subject, project coordinator. Paul and I have been having a sidebar conversation based on a suggestion also by Rebecca on terms of we came up with this payment schedule for paying for the project coordinator. And we came up with that saying we have large facilities and we have small facilities, and the small facilities will pay $2,500 and the large facilities will pay $5,000, and we just kind of adopted that and moved on. Paul and I are taking another deeper dive into, is that really the best way to proceed with the charging for how different municipalities are moving forward in terms of their payment? A current proposal that we've been working on that Paul really came up with a great idea was within a city and a town of Poughkeepsie, they're providing us an office to use for the project coordinator. And that with that office is some expense associated with it. And therefore the Hudson 7 organization should credit them back some expense based on lending us that office at whatever rate we are decided. But in general, the rate for charge, this is a proposal, just keep it a proposal. The rate for charge per municipality is going to be based on gallons per day. And if you take the gallons per day and divide it out amongst and prioritize it and split that percentages up, it really takes the fee scale into a different pattern in terms of how people would charge. For instance, the city and the town of Poughkeepsie jointly now would be $20,350, but you'd have to give them credit for them providing for the office for the for the project coordinator. And Paul threw a number of 6,000, but we should analyze that. So their fee combined would be 14,350. Hyde Park, right, is still, is at 1.07 million gallons per day. That's 8.3% of the total volume of the water. And if you break that out, that's 4,768. The village and town of Rhinebeck are 0.44 million gallons per day. That's 3.4%. So it's 1961. Town of Lloyd is 0.61 million gallons per day, would be 2,718. And the Sopus is 0.27, would be 1,203. I'm throwing this out for discussion, and that's really what this is all about. We're not going to pass any regulations or anything tonight, but does anybody have any thoughts or better way to think about, rather than just saying small and large, as Paul proposed, using the total gallons per day that were being run through the 5 different municipalities? Paul, do you want to add anything?
Can I just add a little context first?
Sure.
So the conversation came up because the town of Hyde Park was asking what the formula was for determining the amounts to contribute to the coordinating position. And so as a thought process and a basis of how the Hudson 7 contributes, how the different municipalities contribute based on flows, might be, and this is all just a proposal and a discussion, might be the baseline for how to determine accurate amounts for municipalities, so that there's a baseline for municipalities to actually start from, right? Gary, is that?
Yeah, no, that's correct. Thank you. Paul, would you like to add anything? You're muted, Paul.
Based on flow, Poughkeepsie is, has the lion's share of this. As if we just broke it down without giving them a credit, they would be paying $20,000 out of the 25. So I think we should pass tonight, since neither one of them are here. But,
right, we are. But this is when I worked it out, it just seemed like, a lot on Poughkeepsie town and the city. And that's why I suggested maybe we give them a credit for the office space. And even when we do that, they're paying like $14,000. So it's not, they're still paying a good portion of it. But if you think about it, the next size plant is Hyde Park, and they're 1/10 of the flow of Poughkeepsie. So.
I think Dan had his hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, just a thought, I think it's good to look at it different ways, and each community needs to really be, present for the conversation, since it, it's important to calibrate how much, they can invest. But I just want to remind everyone also that one of the powers of the Hudson 7 is that it gives the smaller communities a voice that they can't have otherwise. So that, that it's sort of like a disproportionate value for the smaller communities in that way too. So on the one hand, yeah, the flow is greater from Poughkeepsie, but that's almost like saying the Rhinebecks and the Hyde Parks and the Esopuses, you're getting more value for your investment because you're joining with that bigger community and you're becoming this bigger group as a subject. So I sort of worry a little bit about being too too focused on the flow as the metric because of that, because it doesn't, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but it sort of masks that central fact of what the Hudson 7 is a little bit. And so I think it is important to see, I think it was eye-opening to see that analysis and just to put Hyde Park particularly in a better context. But I think still maybe that you might arrive at a 2-tier or maybe a 3-tier, you know, sort of system that's based on flow, but maybe not direct, you know, exactly proportional. And then one other thought though is that, and just to point, you know, there are Hyde Park residents that draw off the town, the Poughkeepsie system. So there's a portion of town of Hyde Park that's served by the Poughkeepsie system as well. So there's that added sort of wrinkle. It's not, I don't think it's a huge population. It probably doesn't tip the balance that much, but it is there. So there's another municipal interest in Hyde Park that's sort of tied to the Poughkeepsie system. And then finally there, you know, I think going way back to like something Randy said, I believe in one of the first meetings was just like, you know, if every customer just had $1 charge a year, you'd have more than enough money to do all of this. So in that way, the flow might be a good way to go about it, because you could just arrive at, you know, a few cents on a water bill, you know, that it could be assessed that it could really cover these costs. But I know it would take longer to, you know, calibrate those rates probably and do that than to make the municipal contribution. So I'm sorry, the kind of different thoughts in different directions there, but hopefully that's helpful.
No, it is helpful. And Dana, was one of the points that we raised was we all benefit equally from the work that we're doing. And so a disproportionate charge doesn't mean we have when we're all benefiting equally. All right. So that was one of my concerns as well. But it goes back to, if you go by population also, that's push you back into the same area of disproportionate benefit based on lower population, but you're still benefiting equally from the work that we do. Our goal is to protect the Hudson River. We had 2 major goals. Number one was to unite the water plants and help the water plants all work together and learn and foster and improve. And number 2 was, you know, protect, obviously most important was protect the estuary, which is the Hudson River and the stream feeding that. And so we've done a great job of doing that, and we've made a lot of accomplishment and a lot more to do, and we all benefit from that equally. It's the same. So.
And also just to piggyback on what Dan was saying in the latter part of his comments, which is that this process is valuable because it can help the Hudson 7 to do more in the future, such as what Dan suggests about making the case for including additional small amounts into water user bills in order to pay for coordinators, perhaps engineers, whatever it might be in the future. So it's good research to do now. So thanks, Paul.
But also, having just gone through a water rate increase, that sometimes takes a lot more work than, you know, asking municipalities to adopt a resolution to support us. So a water rate increase is not a simple task.
It's a long game.
Yeah.
I just did them. I think I did this math right, but lining up the population numbers for each of the systems and the sort of water based equation, it's not even $1 per year per person. It's like 12 cents, 25 cents. I mean, it's really, it's a pretty good bar. You guys are a pretty good bargain.
Lucy. All right, my goal was just to introduce this tonight because we've been having the conversation, and I don't want anything to go on without everybody knowing, at least we're starting to think about it in a different way for across the board, because we're in the process of rewriting the bylaws and everything else. This may be a factor that goes into it. Okay, next, grant, drinking water source protection program.
Yes, sorry, I started talking and I did a thing where I didn't unmute myself. Yeah, so we have a DWSB2 subcommittee meeting on the books for July 8th. The goal there is to go over the mapped focus areas again, and then go about a way to best share this with the rest of the Hudson 7 members at large. And our management brought up that we might not necessarily want to bring that up on a public meeting just because, it is a public meeting and intakes will be on that map, and that is a matter of public security. So yep, just discussing mapping areas again, and then best ways to go about disseminating that and getting discussion and feedback from the rest of the Hudson 7. And I want to send the map, but we're also in the process of standardizing some method or some symbology, and I just want to clear that up with management before we send that to you. But we are targeting that to be sent next week.
All right, thank you, Grant. Okay, moving on. Hudson River drinking water are issues. First one is ribs. We sent a letter, I remember, and Dan, you're going to have to help me or Rebecca on ribs. And
Yeah, I don't think there's any update here. This was the, we could follow up with the state. I think that we had heard that the DEC had said, okay, we got the letter, thanks. We're gonna come back to you with some proposal or some conversation. And so that would be the only action we might take. I don't think we've gotten any communication really formally in response. That was just an informal response. So even an email, just I think we sent this to Ms. Streeter, we could ask for that follow-up meeting.
To jump in as well, this is Grant again. I did also speak with Meredith about this subject, and she did, and I emphasized the importance of this matter to you folks. So I don't know if I can inquire on my end, but I can try poking again.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Grant, if you have accessibility to do that. If there's any follow-up needed, it'd be great to know.
Is there an action also to follow up with Meredith by the Hudson 7 as well, or?
Well, no, I thought that's what Grant was proposing. He could kind of talk to Meredith and see if there's anything that they need.
Right. I heard two things, that's all. So we'll wait for Grant. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's talk about Chippy. All right. So we need to get another meeting on the table with them, and we need to do that very soon to go over. I think, Paul, where we're at, all the recommendations that we gave them, there was like 30, and we were only at like approving. We've come to an agreement on like a dozen of them, right? So we're a third of the way through the document. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but a lot of that work really depends on some oversight and some discussion. So the idea came up, and I think it was Paul's idea, to hire a firm, and this is why we have Daniel here tonight. And the suggestion was possibly Ty and Bond to be the oversight person for TDI. In other words, so who's watching the hen house, right? And can't be us. And we talked about having our water plant operators do it. And while the Poughkeepsie water plant may be very good at doing that and have all the equipment and everything that we need and have coordinated, other plants like the Village of Rhinebeck's water treatment plant, I don't think we can. So it creates an issue in terms of how do we do this, especially if we're going to do the pilot and we're going to use the town of Rhinebeck, the Village of Rhinebeck water treatment plant to be able to do this. We need some way to make sure what's being done has some oversight. So the discussion was to talk to Ty and Bond, which we did. We set up a meeting with Ty and Bond, Brandy Nelson, and Dan were there. to kind of go over an idea of, after we talked through the process, what they would think the engineering monitoring task would be. And Rebecca, you could put that up on the screen, please. And then I'm going to
I would just
turn
like,
the discussion over to Paul and now Dan. to
okay.
take over.
Well, I just wanted to say that this was Rebecca's idea. It wasn't my idea, because Rebecca and I were talking and Rebecca said, like, who's going to be watching the hen house here? And I really didn't give it much thought. But if you think about it, the operators really can't do this because they're going to probably have their hands full when this whole thing is going down. So you really probably do need somebody to make sure everything is going well. So I have to thank Rebecca for that. But so as Gary mentioned, we met and we got some ideas, and Dan got it down on paper, and we'd like to talk to you about it a little bit, and we'll go from there. And Dan, you want to explain the scope?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So the scope is really based on the proposed testing and monitoring protocols that were, I believe, presented, or at least have been discussed to occur during this installation work and leading up to it, to do some sediment sampling in the river bottom sediments, do some pilot testing, as Gary alluded to, at the Rhinebeck intake, and understanding how potentially pollutants could come in through the intakes in the raw water pump. Then to work through the EM and CP process, the environmental management control plan process required of TDI. And then finally, well, not finally, but to be there during the full scale operations, take the information that's learned from the pilot testing, sediment sampling, and more or less execute what will be included in TDI's environmental management and control plan. Beyond that, there's also some emergency planning that's going to be required of the communities from the 5 water treatment plants, just to be prepared in the event that things don't go according to plan. So what we've done here is just try to bulletize some scope items that we felt would be helpful to the Hudson 7. And I don't know, Gary, do you want me to kind of go through in some level of detail, or how detailed would you like me to be here?
Well, let's see if anybody has any questions, and then we can base that off the questions if you don't mind, Dan.
Sure.
I mean, I want to add a little bit though before we get started. In regard to the pilot testing, yes, I did volunteer to Village of Rhinebeck's water treatment plant, but if we're going to do this and we're going to do it this fall, I need a plan to give to my board to get approved to have the water treatment plant come online before this ever starts. And so if this is October that we want to run the pilot, I need to start next month on executing a plan for the pilot. And that's a concern I have, being for the village's plant.
I guess the other big thing is who's going to pay for this, and we all kind of agree that TDI should pay for it. So we're, we have to bring that to their attention, and we'll see how that flies. But and Gary's is looking into some other methods, Gary, on Article 8 or something.
Yeah, there's Article 7. And if you remember, we had hired we had asked John Lyons, who's doing work as pro bono for us as an attorney, but I did send him an email and I followed up with a voicemail, but I haven't had no response from him. Because there could be provisions within Article 7 to be able to cover this expense.
I think it's Article 10, just for clarification.
Oh, was it? Well, there were 7 and 10 that we talked about. We talked about both. I thought it was in Article 7. But
Gary, can I just add a little bit more?
yes, Rebecca, go ahead.
So I just want to acknowledge Emily Svensson's work in leading the Chippy Committee, and that she last month had to step away from leading the Chippy Committee. And so these ideas were born from Emily having to step down. So thanking Emily for her leadership to date.
Yeah, and we're just doing our best to keep it going.
And thanks to Ty and Bond for stepping in to help. Yeah.
So are there any questions for Dan when we have him? Is this a good idea, bad idea? No idea?
I think it's a great idea. I'm glad somebody thought of it and you guys are mobilizing. But the costs that's a concern. You know, I agree that this is put upon us, so I hope something comes to fruition.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna throw out a number, but this is not cheap. This is $100,000 maybe to do this work. I'm not sure, and I'm not gonna ask Dan for a quote, let them work on that and to go forward, but if we wanted to do that, the next step would be for them to kind of find, come back with a projected cost so that when we go to TDI, we can say, here's what we would like. And I don't think it should come from TDI as recommending to us who they want to hire. Right? It should be from us telling them who we want to hire.
And I'll just add that, in addition to just the labor of overseeing this process, there's also some equipment that certain treatment plants will need. And we start to think through whether we can make those mobile to move from plant to plant to be able to monitor water quality. So there's an investment needed as well in the monitoring equipment, whether it be rented or purchased.
Once again, we're expecting TDI to pay for that.
Yeah. Is that, is the equipment that Poughkeepsie had got from the Central Hudson settlement helpful in that regard, or is this different? You need different testing equipment?
Well, basically what we're looking for is a real-time continuous monitoring.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. Like what Randy has, you'd have to take a sample out and analyze it. And
Right.
by the
Okay.
time you do it, they're down river. So
I do have one. I mean, it seems like a really smart, plan to get third party oversight and get that in place. My question is more just on sort of good government process. In that, would you need to put this out to bid or do an RFP, and then I understand. I'm not suggesting that Ty and Bond wouldn't be the best choice in the end anyway, but isn't that necessary, or is it a process wise?
I think professional services are exempt.
They are
Only
okay.
equipment above 25,000.
And that's correct. And we did tap into this in our discussion. And the discussion was, should one municipality be responsible for overseeing this if it's a contract with Ty and Bond? Or how can we organize this so we're not putting that burden on a municipality? Because it's additional workload to, even if it's a treasurer just to monitor and pay the bills or do whatever, there's work involved here by a municipality to do this. And I don't think we came to an answer for how to make that work. So I think there is more work to be able to be done here. But and I think that would be part of the discussion with TDI. TDI, we would, we want you to hire this firm and here's how much it's going to cost, and the data gets shared. All right, any other questions? Again, since we don't have a quorum, we're introducing these subjects. All right, I'm gonna move on. Paul, do you have anything on the Esopus Creek?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody, Rebecca and I are now on the a show can't release working group, and we kind of noticed that they're totally disorganized, and it's almost like New York City wants it that way. And they try to pit one group against another group, and I really had to tell them, why don't we meet before these meetings so we know what we're going to talk about? And this is a typical David versus Goliath story. New York City's Goliath, and Ulster County and all of us are David. But they have to watch out because Rebecca and I are pretty good with a slingshot, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, we had a meeting last time, and New York City tells all their weather reports and the elevation of all the things and wastes about a half an hour of the meeting. And then they had a session on insects at various locations in the stream and upstream and everything else. And then they always put me the last on the agenda. Last time I had to do a 20-minute presentation in 5 minutes. And this time I got a little bit longer. And what I kind of noticed, I don't know if anybody really knows all this, but New York City's got to shut down the Delaware Aqueduct. And the Delaware Aqueduct provides 50% of the water for New York City. So that means that the Ashokan is going to have to step up and provide much more water. So what New York City is going to do is take most of their water from the Delaware system during the summer of 2023 and let the water build up in the Ashokan. So that means that there is absolutely no flood water storage in the reservoir. So if it rains, if we have a tropical storm, we could have a major flood. And, FEMA says that the most important thing is for New York City to have storage available. And when I read the EIS from New York City, it basically doesn't even talk about tropical storms. So, I talked to them, but as I could tell you that the New York City sends not decision makers to these meetings, and DC is probably even worse. They send an engineer with 1 year experience. So it's an organization that really doesn't work. And this has been going on for 10 years, or I should say 12 years. And it probably will go on for another 10 years before any sort of solution is reached. So I'm trying to come up with some temporary solutions, but it always falls on deaf ears. So that's the story. I'm sorry, a little long, but.
All right, just keep that slingshot handy.
Oh, the one thing I wanted to say is that, they asked me, do you think that flooding will affect the Hudson 7? I said, well, probably not to that great extension. And then I felt a kick under the table from Rebecca that says Hudson 7 would be affected. If you think about it, when you have a flood, you wind up with sewage in the water, you wind up with all sorts of things. So it would definitely affect us, even though, our water might not rise and go over the banks of the Hudson River, but the water quality is going to be pretty bad if there's a flood.
Just for the record too, Gary, to bring forward your comments from last month that flooding was a concern to the Hudson 7 last month because of additional turbidity from the flood releases, what have you, and that's in the record from last month. So just want to bring that forward from the conversation that the Hudson 7 had.
Just one other thing. I am going to be away in July and away in September, so I'm going to miss these 2 meetings, and I'm also going to miss the Show Can Release Working Group meeting. So I don't know, Gary, if you can go. I'm going to try to make the August meeting, but I think I'm going to be at North Lake during that time, but I'll try to get home.
I can try, Paul. Just keep me in the, or let's connect so I make sure I have it on my calendar. And
Okay.
all right, new business. I know we didn't have a campaign, we haven't had a primary, but we need to elect officers. And both myself and Jay, we've reached, in terms of our current IMA, our end of our term limits that we imposed upon ourselves going forward. So we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what our plan is going to be. Jay's not here. We don't have a quorum, so there's not going to be any decision. But we need some input in terms of how we want to proceed to appoint officers. And I think it looks like we'll have to table this for next month to proceed with that. If there's any comments or suggestions, please, you can voice them now, but we need to figure out what we need to do. We're in, my only concern is we're in a turbidity time where we're rewriting the IMA and our bylaws and everything else. So there is going to be changes happening over the next, hopefully over the next 6 months that will definitely be of great impact and concern for this organization. So we need some sort of continuance to work. And also in our discussion with Linda French and from legal counsel, it came up that we really need to focus on also hiring a treasurer or appointing a treasurer to our board as well. So all good things, but we need to figure it out. Okay. All right. And lastly, this is going to be our last true virtual meeting. I don't know if any of you have heard, but the governor has, unless this extended, the governor has changed the video conferencing guidelines for the open meeting law. And we are going to have to go back to at minimum, having a quorum present at a physical location. And then you can have other council members with approval for extraordinary circumstances, TBD, that can also then zoom in to it, but you need to have a quorum present at a physical location. So next month, we will be working to try to make sure we have the room again at the Town of Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Plant for our July meeting. And those who can't make it, we'll have to make sure they meet it with, and want to zoom in, meet the guidelines of extraordinary circumstances.
Gary, if I could ask a question. So I'm based out of the Monticello office and Mike is out of the Albany office. Would there still be a virtual option?
Yes, there is still a virtual option. And Grant, since you're not a council member, anybody else like yourself or others can zoom in all the time.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, there will always be a virtual option. And the rules don't apply to you. They apply to the board members.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Yeah, Dan.
Well, I just wonder, I mean, that seems like we've gotten so used to this. And I remember it was hectic for everyone traveling in the past to get here. I just probably would benefit from some extra outreach to each of the members that require quorum, at least for the first time. I worry the worst thing that could happen is, you have less than a quorum show up in person, and you've made the travel for that.
Correct. No, I agree. Good point.
Um,
So we'll have to reach it. We'll do a lot of extra communication for the July meeting. We have to reserve the room yet too, so be sure it's available.
I know we're over time, but can I mention just very briefly the pleasure I had in being the one to award Paul an award the other day, even though he wasn't there, but Dan was. But the Hudson River Watershed Alliance recognized Paul as a wave maker. That's the name of their awards. And it was a really nice event at the Falcon in Marlborough. And there was food that Paul didn't eat. There was music that Paul didn't hear. There were nice words said about Paul he didn't hear, but no, it really was wonderful. And it was well-deserved, Paul, and your colleagues, I think, spoke on your behalf very well. But the good work that you've been doing for the Hudson 7 was recognized. The audience really responded to it and appreciated it. And you could just, tell that they really understood the value of this volunteer contribution that you've been making, and really appreciated it. And it was nice for me to be there and to be a part of it for you.
Yeah, that's
And the Yankees beat the Twins in Minnesota, so I was.
Lynn, you had your hand up.
That was actually a clap.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. Okay, we can't make, Rebecca has her hand up. Sorry. You're muted, Rebecca.
Just want to clarify the record, going back to the Chippy discussion, that it is Article 7 and not Article 10. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah. Okay. We can't make a motion to adjourn, but I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 6:33, and we will see you all hopefully sooner